Today we're doing something a bit different, actually. Really diving into the very personal side of things with an astrological reading. We've got some fascinating source material here, basically, a detailed chat between an astrologer, Ekaterina, and this is the key part, a real skeptic, Vlad. And our mission, you could say, for this deep dive is to see, can looking really closely at someone's natal chart actually sway a skeptic? Can it give them insights they didn't expect, maybe even shake up some of those ideas they hold about themselves? It's definitely going to be interesting.
Yeah, it's compelling because it really goes beyond just, do you believe in astrology? Yes or no? We're stepping into a bigger question, really. How do these different ways of thinking, ancient stuff like astrology or even modern psychology, how do they try to make sense of, us, human experience? It's about seeing how these frameworks meet skepticism head on. And what can we actually learn about ourselves when that happens? It's less a debate, more an exploration, looking through different lenses.
Okay, so let's dig into this. Starting with Ekaterina, the astrologer. Our sources show she's not just about astrology, she's also into tarot and parapsychology, which is quite a mix. She calls it an integrated approach. Her goal, she says, is transforming a person through their spiritual experience. And she uses these three sciences, as she calls them. But she's clear, it's not about being fanatical. She uses different tools for different people, like she juggles them. She said something funny, like you can cut bread with a dull knife if you really want to eat. So very flexible, not stuck on one system, finding the right tool for the job, essentially.
Right. And her own story of how she came to believe this stuff is pretty revealing. It wasn't overnight. She said it really started clicking around age 30. She ordered a natal chart, just kind of curious, I guess, but what she got back was so impressive, so accurate, it made her want to study it herself. Started with her own chart, then family, friends, comparing, watching. But the real turning point, the moment she said all doubts left, was when she was 35. And it wasn't just an idea, it was when her karmic task for this life, which her chart apparently detailed, actually happened, played out in real life. That made it undeniable for her, a lived experience.
Okay, karmic tasks playing out. What does that actually mean, though? How does she explain that?
Well, she describes it as this sort of dynamic with the universe. If you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, like following your task, you feel growth, more energy, like things are flowing. But if you're not on that path or you're resisting it, then life kind of cleans you out, is how she put it, to get you back on track. So it can be a much tougher experience then, right? Designed to push you onto the right path. She calls it her life proves it philosophy. She admits she was skeptical at first, too. She'd hear things and think, I'll just see what happens, questioning if it was real. But then she says, when you get a couple of kicks, you think, okay, we'll go with this story. Her view is that information comes when you need it. Ignore it. It'll come back, maybe louder, from somewhere else. And eventually, the universe is like, okay, if you're so stupid, go try it yourself. Boom, the kicks. That hard experience is what really solidifies belief for many people, she thinks.
Wow, that's quite a way to frame learning. Life itself forces the issue. She also talked about something simpler, more human, though, just the importance of faith. Even if it's not religious faith, like in a crisis, you need to believe in something. Maybe a friend, a parent, maybe just yourself, even if that's hard. She said having just one person who believes in you when things are tough can make a huge difference. That really hit home.
Absolutely. And that idea of support brings us to an example she gave right at the start about Vlad, the skeptic we're focusing on. Apparently, Vlad has this really grounding, stabilizing effect on Roman, the other person in the conversation, our co-host. And Ekaterina immediately pointed to their astrology, Taurus-Scorpio. She called it a very good combination, a balance. It just shows how these dynamics, whether you buy the astrology or not, can be felt in relationships. That sense of balance and support. We'll definitely circle back to that.
Okay, yeah, let's pivot to Vlad then. His starting position was, pretty blunt. He basically said, I don't believe in any of this, full stop. Called himself maximally unspiritual. No religion, no astrology, no numerology, nothing. I only believe in myself and my immediate surroundings. Quite the contrast to Ekaterina's journey, isn't it? He's all about the tangible, what he can see and touch. Sets a high bar for this reading.
It really does. And you wonder, how do you approach something like this if you're that skeptical? But Vlad, despite his stance, said he'd be maximally honest. If something resonated, he'd say so. No resistance. He treated it like an experience, like, okay, let's see what happens. Observing, reporting. That openness, even with the disbelief, was key. It allowed for actual reflection, not just shutting it all down. Made the whole thing possible, really. And that led straight into the chart stuff, starting with a big one, Venus in Scorpio. Ekaterina described this as potent and difficult, signifying his biggest trauma related to betrayal. Apparently, this shows up as this deep feeling of being broken and serious trust issues, especially with women. It's not just general caution, it's tied to this fear of deep emotional wounds.
That sounds heavy. So how does that Venus in Scorpio actually play out day to day? You said trust issues, but what does that look like?
Well, it creates this major protective wall. According to Ekaterina, Vlad rarely opens up. For him, real closeness requires serious proof, like going through fire and waterproof. He can chat, connect mentally, sure, but there's a deep internal fence you just don't get past easily. She even said people with this placement can be the most difficult clients for psychotherapy because that inner core is so guarded. It's clearly painful. But, and this is important, she also said this placement holds a lot of resource. That pain, if he works through it, can actually become a source of strength, resilience, deep understanding. It's got potential.
Yeah, sounds like a massive emotional task. Which makes sense then why Ekaterina flat out said relationships with women will be the main task of this life for him. That's huge. A burden, maybe, but also, like you said, maybe an opportunity for major growth. The central theme.
Exactly. And it gets even more specific with the retrograde Venus aspect in his chart. Retrograde in astrology often means you cannot learn a lesson from life to life. Or if you don't buy reincarnation, it means the family system, the ancestors, struggle with a particular lesson, specifically here, money, and definitely women. It connects to ancestral karma. Like the family line keeps hitting the same wall with relationships, trust, how men relate to women. They can't quite go through the same story and break the cycle. So Vlad's job, in a way, is to close the ancestral gestalt, to finally resolve this pattern around men's relationship to women, men's perception of women. He's kind of carrying that for the lineage. And there's a second task tied to the ancestors too, unfolding of spiritual potential. The idea is his family line might have faced hardship, being persecuted, exiled, stuff like that. Heavy stories, which led them to suppress their talents, their unique gifts, to play it safe, live an average standard family life. His fourth house, that's home, roots, ancestors, is in Capricorn, which suggests living by the rules, social laws, norms, prioritizing stability over maybe shining brightly. So the potential, the gifts, weren't fully expressed. Vlad's task is also to break that pattern, to let that potential out.
That clicks with what Roman observed about Vlad, actually. Roman often sees Vlad holding back that more expressive, maybe even spiritual side. Roman has this theory. What annoys us in people is what we forbid ourselves to express. Canned form. So maybe Vlad getting irritated by Roman's openness is just reflecting what Vlad secretly wants but won't allow himself. Roman feels like it's his job to kind of pull Vlad into this expression because he senses Vlad deep down wants this. And we saw that happen, didn't we? With Vlad eventually agreeing to do this whole deep dive publicly. A big step for him.
Yeah, absolutely. So shifting from that inner world to how he expresses himself outwardly, his masculine energy, we look at Mars in Leo in the 10th house. Now that is a very strong placement, central to his drive, his identity, how he shows up in the world. What it means astrologically is that Vlad has this deep need to really like to be a great expert in his field. He craves recognition from people I respect and whose work I acknowledge. Not just any praise, it has to be from authorities, people whose opinions matter to him. And the Leo part, Ekaterina joked they show off for a reason. It's based on real achievements. They share because there's substance there. And the 10th house is career, public image. So it amplifies that desire for public recognition as an expert.
Okay, so if he needs to be this expert, what's the actual task associated with that energy? It sounds like more than just being good at his job.
Exactly. The deeper task is about motivating people to be like you as an expert. It's leadership, teaching others how to get better, how to level up. His spiritual path isn't about praying or anything traditional like that. It's about asking what good I bring to society, why I do all this. Using his expertise for the collective good, not just ego, helping others rise with him, inspiring by example, sharing knowledge, not looking down on people who know less, but actively helping them improve. And numerology backs this up. Apparently, Vlad's mission is a 4, which means innovator, bringing revolutionary things to people, but not just shaking things up constantly. It's about creating something new and stabilizing it, building systems, solidifying them, and then teaching them. Sharing the structure. She did make a funny comparison based on numerology to Oyu, the Russian politician known for, well, stirring things up. That got a laugh. And this need for authentic purpose, it affects his work directly, like in marketing. If Vlad doesn't genuinely believe in a product he's supposed to promote, his gut feeling, his internal feeling will just scream, no, major resistance. And if he pushes past that feeling anyway, the sources say life will take much more from him. Energy drain, maybe even financially. He has to believe so much that something is cool and useful that he can genuinely say, look, this is amazing, you need this. That conviction is crucial for him. It has to align.
Right, okay. Now, let's get into that really complex area you mentioned earlier, the jelly part, his relationships, particularly what kind of woman is he drawn to? We know Venus in Scorpio means trust issues, but what's the attraction profile?
Yeah, jelly is a good word for it. It's complicated. So his Venus in Scorpio and Mars in Leo together paint a very specific picture. On the surface, he's drawn to women who are bright, charismatic, sexual, the femme fatale type almost, maybe stockings, red lipstick, she suggested, someone visually striking. Importantly, she has to be his pride. He needs to feel proud showing her off, like having her is an accomplishment. But that's just the outside layer. The deeper pull, the real magnet, is a woman with a lot of sexual energy, but, and this is key, who doesn't scatter it, meaning she has this strong, self-contained inner core. She holds her power, doesn't give it away easily. She might seem unavailable or inaccessible at first, not physically, but energetically self-possessed. And that creates this intense draw for Vlad, this sense of unspent inner sex, this focused energy he wants to connect with, almost merge with. He senses it as a resource, and here's where it gets, well, maybe a bit confronting. The core purpose women serve in his life, according to the chart. Ekaterina put it bluntly. Women are needed for him to grow financially and socially. The idea is he takes energy from women and then materializes it into money and success. So if a woman isn't providing that energetic fuel for his growth, she becomes, well, no longer useful in that dynamic. Now, this isn't about her earning money herself. It's about her energy, her self-worth, her essence, fueling his drive and manifestation. Ekaterina explained that a woman who respects herself knows who to give her energy to, and that focused energy is what Vlad is meant to draw on. It's a symbiotic, but with a clear direction of flow.
That is a really strong statement and potentially uncomfortable, yeah. But Vlad himself pushed back on that a bit, didn't he? He pointed out his partners have always earned way less than him. So he wasn't seeing that direct link or feeling like he needed to compete financially.
Exactly, and that's the crucial distinction. It's not about her income. It's an internal energetic thing. His growth happens because she's there, because he's drawing on her specific feminine energy, her self-worth, her loyalty, her core essence. She provides the internal fuel. He turns it into external results. Think energy, not dollars. Her presence enables his drive, even if she earns less. It's an energetic partnership fueling his ambition. Okay, back to that Venus in Scorpio. Ekaterina stressed it's considered the weakest position for Venus in exile, very sensitive. This creates core fears in Vlad that a woman will break him, betray him, and humiliate him. Deep-seated stuff. Because of this fear, he looks through a distorted lens of perception. He sees potential threats, betrayal, even when it's not intended. This leads to a subconscious need to test her loyalty, her obedience, just to feel safe. She gave an example. Girlfriend posts a bikini pic. His subconscious might read that as personal humiliation, a test of whether she submits to his unspoken rules. His fear projects onto her actions, creating conflict out of thin air sometimes.
And importantly, Ekaterina framed this as Vlad's issue to work on. It's his perception, his inner wound. Not necessarily the woman's fault for, say, posting a photo.
Precisely. Scorpio energy, she explained, tends to deeply pack negative emotions. Like a sewer was her vivid term. Other signs might react, release, move on. Scorpio internalizes, accumulates. So a small trigger, like that photo, can make all that packed away stuff explode, leading to thoughts like active disobedience, betrayal, huge reactions to seemingly small things. It's characteristic if it's not managed. This intensity leads to another, more philosophical, maybe controversial idea Ekaterina brought up. Everything is leased, especially relationships. With Scorpio's transformational energy, the idea of one for life is challenging. Her view is every person comes into our life for a specific task, a phase of growth. If that person stops being energetically useful for the Scorpio's transformation, stops fueling that growth, then she said that person might destroy themselves in the relationship, like self-sabotage, or be destroyed by the Scorpio's intense energy. This can lead to massive conflict, breakdown, or even, her words, a fatal outcome, meaning a complete, possibly catastrophic end to the connection.
Yes. Julia, that stark, fatal outcome. You hear that and think, abusive, right, in normal terms. But from this perspective, it's framed less as malice and more as this like fear-driven, energetic thing. Almost a necessary shedding for the Scorpio's path, but potentially devastating. Really makes you think about agency versus these supposed energies.
It definitely does. But to balance that, Ekaterina also strongly stated that Scorpios are often one of the few people who can be faithful, love deeply, and not cheat. They have huge capacity for loyalty if that deep connection and purpose is there. They only cut ties when that's truly gone, so intense loyalty is also part of the picture.
Okay, this whole thread about trust, weakness, relationships, it brings up something personal for me, and Vlad felt it too. This difficulty showing weakness to women. For both of us, it feels tied to upbringing. You know, men are supposed to be strong, handle everything, no cracks allowed. It's weird because we can be vulnerable with other guys, like each other, but with women, there's this wall, resistance. Pretty common, I think.
Ekaterina's take is interesting. She says that inability to show weakness comes from a lack of trust. First, lack of trust in yourself. And if you don't trust yourself, maybe trust that you chose the right partner or trust that your weakness is okay, then you can't trust her to handle it well. She told a story about a client, also Venus and Scorpio, who feared submission to her husband, thought it was humiliating. Through therapy, the client realized it wasn't humiliation, it was actually returning the energy he gave her. It led to growth for both of them. It was about breaking the illusion of humiliation, realizing the fear wasn't the reality. And Ekaterina warns that men who can't show weakness often become very cool, first to themselves, suppressing everything, then projecting that outward, especially onto women, becoming cold, cruel men.
That explanation really shines a light on Vlad's current relationship. He said it's new, like 1.5 months, but already constant arguing. He blames his distrust and this need for absolute blind faith, like she should jump out the window if he asked. Wow. He calls her a domina, strong, maybe controlling, but he's also incredibly drawn to her animalistic passion, chemistry, even her smell. He admitted it took him 30 years to even notice how much a woman's scent could affect him. It's intense, visceral, despite the arguments.
And Ekaterina sees that animalistic passion as the point of entry. It's not just random attraction. It reflects his internal program, like women can't be trusted or women must be subdued. This specific woman with her challenging energy is the exact person he needs to finally go through this experience and finish this program. The intense pull means she holds the key to unlocking and resolving this core pattern for him. He even mentioned wanting to find the one who will drive me under her heel, but noting it hadn't happened in 30 years. That desire for a domina is tied right into this need to confront his issues around control and trust, which led Ekaterina to suggest something pretty out there for healing this. She said starkly, through BDSM, one can also get out of this scenario, but she immediately clarified not physical stuff. She meant facing the psycho-emotional humiliation. Her example was extreme, purely symbolic. If your woman makes you watch her having sex with another man, quote. For Vlad, she explained, that idea represents the biggest humiliation imaginable. It hits all his deepest fears: betrayal, loss of control, ego death.
Whoa. Okay, so not literally doing that, but confronting the fear of it.
Yeah.
Mentally facing the worst-case scenario.
Exactly. It's about symbolically reliving the feeling of a past humiliation from this life, ancestors, past lives, whatever, that created the deep fear, offense, pain. All his energy now goes into preventing that feeling. So facing it symbolically or in therapy can break its hold. The alternative, she stressed, is therapy. It's about breaking the illusion. Psychologists help you see it as an illusion, like turning on the light to show there's no monster, recognizing the mental movie isn't reality.
But Vlad's skeptical about therapy, too, that classic male thing. If you can't help yourself, no one can. Self-reliance is a barrier.
Right. And Ekaterina sees that resistance as the psyche protecting itself from pain. It's natural, but limiting. She said she gets help for her own blind spots, acknowledging it's an illusion of the mind. Fear is an illusion of the mind. Therapy aims to gently dismantle those illusions, help you face what you've buried, like someone holding your hand saying, look, it's not scary, just an old illusion. This whole thing led to defining masculine strength. How do you see it?
For me, it's about taking responsibility. For yourself, your partner, leading them to a better life financially, mentally, physically protecting them, being the rock, making the tough calls, guiding things forward, solid.
Ekaterina agreed with the protection part, but her definition focused more on strength of spirit. Quote, being open about feelings, able to be weak, tender, managing emotions like calming a partner down instead of escalating things, saying, calm down, drink water, being the steady anchor, and crucially, not competing with women, accepting all parts of yourself strong, weak, everything integrating them. She repeated that suppressing weakness leads to cruelty, first inward, then outward. Cold, cruel men.
That really hit me. Thinking about my ex-wife, how she accepted my weaknesses when I was low, but I still ended up, well, destroying her energetically, like you said. It's not just about their acceptance, it's about your own internal integration.
And that connects to Vlad's childhood feeling of being humiliated through care, like wanting to do something himself but being told, you're too small, or let me do it. So maybe meant as loving protection, but it sends a message, you're not capable. Creates that unworthiness feeling. Plants seeds for control issues later, subtle but powerful. Ekaterina then brought in the past lives angle again. The idea that our family is chosen to activate these old, dormant traumas. The family system triggers the exact patterns we need to face in this life, gives us the chance to work through them, heal them, and maybe get out of the wheel of samsara, stop repeating the same painful cycles. Puts a different spin on why we face certain struggles.
Okay, this next part, the compatibility between Roman and me, Vlad, this is where it got really uncanny. Almost spooky, honestly.
Oh, absolutely. The reading showed a seriously deep connection between you two, like your paths were meant to cross. First, Roman's Lilith and Moon are in Vlad's 7th house. Now, the 7th house is partnerships, right? Significant relationships. This means Roman acts like an intuitive filter for Vlad's partners. He just knows who's right for Vlad, personally and professionally, like a built-in radar. Then, Roman's Sun is in Vlad's 8th house, the 8th house. That's transformation, shared resources, facing deep stuff, death, and rebirth cycles. This means Roman is a strong transformer for Vlad, helping him let go of things, especially material attachments linked to his Taurus energy. Ekaterina called Roman a spiritual arrival in Vlad's life, someone who pushes him to change, even when it's uncomfortable, a catalyst. Plus, Roman's Mercury and Venus are in Vlad's 9th house. The 9th house is about worldview, philosophy, higher learning, travel. So Roman expands Vlad's worldview, acts as a mentor or advisor. She even threw out possibilities like being brothers in a past life, or Roman advising a higher status Vlad. Roman helps activate Vlad's bigger picture of the world, challenges his thinking. And maybe most strikingly, Roman's Jupiter is in Vlad's 2nd house, the 2nd house. That's money, resources, self-worth. This is huge financially. Ekaterina said, basically, as long as you two are connected, Vlad will be fine with money. Roman literally increases his resources, an energetic boost to his finances.
I have to say that resonates strongly, especially thinking back to my divorce. Really tough time financially, emotionally. And Romy just felt this urge to reach out right now. We started running, exercising. It pulled me out of a really dark place, got me active again. It's a definite turning point. So the idea that our connection helps my resources, my overall well-being. Yeah, I feel that.
And it goes both ways. Vlad's moon is in Roman's 1st house. The 1st house is the self, personality, how you appear. This makes Vlad like a mom figure for Roman, providing deep emotional support, understanding. Roman sees him as family, which is vital for Roman, who finds it hard to let people in. Vlad offers that rare feeling of safety, belonging, essential for him. Then there's a major vertex and past life node connection. The vertex is like a point of fated encounters. Nodes are about karma and past lives. It signals a very strong past life connection, an important person who came into your life from the past. Specifically, to pull Roman out of his 12th house tendencies, that's the house of seclusion, hidden things into the light of the 6th house, which is about daily work, service, being out in the world. Like Roman is repaying a past debt, moving from isolation to engagement, thanks to Vlad's influence, a push towards the world. But maybe the wildest part is the sheer synchronicity in your lives. Think about this. Both got driver's licenses around the same time, started serious relationships around the same time, bought first cars, moved out, sold old cars for new ones all around the same time without planning it. Even small things, like one needing dental work needles while the other was getting tattoos, also needles, happening in parallel. It's just uncanny, more than coincidence. Based on all this, Ekaterina suggested you were likely twins in a past life, always side by side, supporting, balancing each other. And this current project, this deep dive show, she said it was predetermined, a continuation of that dynamic. Vlad as the motivator, pushing it forward into the public eye. Roman as the supporter, the anchor, making it possible. She confirmed Roman's support was key for Vlad to even do this. It's a partnership for mutual growth, fulfilling old patterns, creating together. So if we boil down Vlad's core task, his life purpose, it really centers on the development of his own resource through Scorpio energy. Yeah, so good. Which means learning not being attached to anything, because he has so much internal resource, there's so much of it. Like an ocean of energy, why cling to one drop? This massive resource, fueled by Mars and Pluto, Scorpio's co-ruler, planet of transformation and power, needs to go towards social growth, teaching transformation, helping people find their talents, making the world brighter. Through his work, like marketing, elevating others, helping them succeed, eventually becoming a mentor, sharing his experience, his wisdom, his systems for society's benefit. He needs that deep belief in what he offers. And his numerology for mission reinforces it. Innovate, then stabilize it. Create lasting systems, not just fleeting ideas. Teach them.
Okay, that's a lot. And honestly, part of me hears that and thinks it sounds terrible. It sounds really scary. The idea that if all this complex astrology stuff actually works, if it's true, it's unsettling. Hearing about these deep patterns, ancestral stuff, karma influencing you so much, It feels almost offensive somehow. Like it takes away from the idea that we form ourselves through our choices, our life experiences, the things we actually live through day to day, the thought that it's predetermined by something from the sky or past lives. It really challenges your sense of free will, makes you question everything. It's deeply unsettling.
That's a completely understandable reaction. And it's a huge question, isn't it? Where does destiny end and free will begin? It's important to see it maybe less as denying your life experience that absolutely shapes you. Of course it does. But this framework suggests that maybe childhood stuff or ancestral patterns or past life echoes act like triggers. They activate a pre-existing program or wound. Your current life then becomes the stage, the perfect setting to finally work through that activated pattern consciously. So it's not negating your agency. You still choose how you respond. Do you transform the pattern or let it run you? It's maybe more like a dance between the two.
I have to admit, despite being such a skeptic coming into this, something clicked for me during this whole exploration. Something definitely resonated in a way I didn't expect. That absolute wall of disbelief I've had my whole life, it cracked, let's put it that way. It's not gone, not by a long shot.
Right.
But there's a crack, an opening. And it's left me with a lot to think about, to process, to see how these ideas fit or don't fit with how I see the world. It's, a lot to mull over. It definitely sparks some curiosity.
And maybe that, Roman, is part of your role here, too. Like we talked about with the compatibility, you're the one kind of leading Vlad from the material to the spiritual. In this specific deep dive, maybe Ekaterina helped open your eyes a little bit, too. Broaden the perspective on different ways to understand ourselves. You act as a bridge, maybe. For Vlad, for yourself, and maybe for you listening right now, expanding awareness.
So wrapping this up, what does this all mean for you listening along? My personal thought, the thing I want to leave you with is this. If a tool or a perspective, whether it's astrology like this or psychology or some spiritual practice or even just something simple like yoga or meditation, if it genuinely helps you navigate life, understand yourself better, helps you grow, then absolutely take it, use it, embrace it. But if it doesn't serve you, if it feels like noise or clutter or just doesn't ring true for you, then it's not for you. Let it go. The real challenge, maybe the ultimate deep dive for all of us, is figuring out what truly helps us become more aligned, more authentic, more effective, and what's just getting in the way, discerning what serves you. Thanks for joining us on this really fascinating and, personally quite resonant journey. We'll catch you next time on The Deep Dive.